Before I call this,
Marianne,
trouble. Not you, Tim. Good afternoon.
Jamie do. I'm getting blamed for.
That's how that works. Good afternoon. Before I call this meeting to order, I would like to note for the record that I will serve as the acting chair of this meeting. I now call to order the meeting of the directors of the Atlantic Yards Community Development Corporation for Wednesday, January 17th, 2018. I'd like to note for the record that this meeting is being webcast. The directors have received the relevant written materials in advance of the meeting and are free to ask questions at any time. Consistent with the policy of our parent corporation, we welcome public comment on the items on the following agenda. After each item is presented and any comments are received from the directors, we will allow members of the public to provide comments. All comments should be limited to 2 minutes and should only address the item that is under consideration. You will note that the final item on our agenda today is titled Public Comments. At that time, we will have an opportunity for members of the public to provide comments on non-agenda related matters. Please keep in mind that it is our intention to try to conclude by 5 p.m., which is our allotted time. Now I would like to ask the directors whether anyone has any potential conflict of interest with respect to any of the items on the agenda. If so, I would ask you to please make the appropriate disclosure on the record at this time. We will then be sure that you can recuse yourselves from any discussion. Hearing none, our first order of business is the approval of the minutes of the directors' meeting on October 17, 2017. Are there any questions, comments, additions, deletions? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
so moved.
A second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. The motion carries. Now I'd like to call on Marianne Phillips to provide us with the president's report. This item is being presented for your information only, and no vote will be required. Marianne?
Good afternoon, everyone, and Happy New Year to all of you. We appreciate all of you coming out today. We did not anticipate the weather, but we appreciate you pressing through. Today is a special call meeting that we informed all of you about a year ago. We said that once the transaction between Greenland and Faris City became official, that we would have a special meeting of the directors for the developer to come and explain to you the details of the transaction, transition of the project, so that all of you could have a better understanding directly from the directors. I believe all of you were informed recently before the announcement was made, and so we just wanted to bring you together today to do so. A couple other items we do want to discuss while we have you. One, that we're going to do a recap of the October 17th, 2017 meeting. There were some items that came up that you wanted to discuss. You wanted some feedback and additional information. We'll provide that today. Excuse me. Also, to inform you for our March meeting, which would have been our regularly scheduled meeting of the first quarter of the year, there are currently three items for the agenda. There will be 2 contracts. The contract of STV, who is our owner's rep, will be brought through for renewal. Also, the AKRF contract, which is our HDR contract, who is our environmental. As you know, a year ago, you extended it for 1 year. We said we'd come back and let you know where it stands and where we are in the project. And we will come forward at that point to discuss it with you in March, and also the annual budget. Annual budgets of all the subsidiaries of ESD come before all the subs prior to the end of the March meeting, or the March ESD meeting, so ESD can approve its budget for the new fiscal year, which the new state fiscal year, which begins April 1st. Then we'll have Toby do an update of the quality of life meeting from November 2017. Also, any community updates and concerns. And then finally, the purpose of the meeting, which is for Ashley Cotton and Scott Solish from Greenland Faris City Partners to come present their new partnership. And then we'll have public comments from that point. Questions and answers from the directors to the developer. Some highlights since our last meeting. We had discussed in our last meeting the block 1129, which is from Carlton to Vanderbilt along Dean. As you know, there has been a question of the 16-foot fence. Good news, the fence is now down. It's down to 8 feet, and we moved it out of the street and moved it to the property line. As you know, building B14 and B11 are both open and operating, and B12 and B13 are going to become temporary open space. I want to emphasize temporary because as they begin moving forward in the project, those spaces will go to becoming buildings. And so that's the good news. The fence has been moved, which has been able to restore a little bit better traffic flow, a much better access for a few parking spaces. So that's been a good thing. Also, some bittersweet news. Two of our directors whose term ended, Jamie and Linda. Linda has officially resigned. She was the appointment of the State Assembly. Jamie plans to resign later this year. But before she resigned, she wanted to make sure that she submitted a white paper to the directors and to ESD, AYCDC staff, which she has done. Toby will circulate the white paper. It really gives us ideas as relates to community engagement whenever we get to the point of doing an EIS or a modification of the GPP that would really be in correlation with shifting of the bulk from Site 1 to Site 5 or any other work related to Site 5. At this point, there is nothing to report on Site 5, mainly because they are still in litigation and we're not able to speak to that. Having said that, once we get to that point, we'll be coming to the directors, and Jamie has submitted, and I did review the document. I think there are some very good ideas related to community engagement, how we can really include not only the AYCDC, but how do we engage a little bit more or more robust community engagement that we would normally do with a GPP modification. So we will circulate that. Toby will be circulating that with our post-meeting notes.
Thank you, Jamie.
Related to STV, STV is our monitoring of activity of the construction activity, and that contract is up for a 2-year renewal. It is a contract that has been renewed several times. The first part of the contract was signed in 2010. And we've always done 2-year extensions. They really are the owner's rep, the eyes and ears of ESD and AYCDC on the ground related to the project. And then the other project is HDRs, which you are familiar with. Those are the things that are going to come up at our March meeting. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to give you a heads up. I'm not sure if there are any questions related to that, but I just want to give you a heads up. There'll be a full discussion related to those contracts at that time, and we can discuss them then. If there are no questions from the directors, I'll ask Toby to go ahead and present the community update, and then we'll go from there.
Good afternoon, directors. I wanted to just check in with you with regards to the November 14, 2017 Quality of Life meeting. That was our last meeting for the 2017 calendar year. Just some key areas of discussion, whereas Marianne mentioned earlier, the changes to the Block 1129 construction fence. The fence was, again, reduced from 16 feet to 8 feet and pushed back from the street into the property line. There's been some work that's been happening behind the fence to kind of make sure that the B12 site has been brought up to grade, and that activity has been taken care of. The restriping, I believe, was also finalized along Dean Street. Moving to the Times Plaza redesign, as we remember from the last October meeting, Jane Marshall gave us a full presentation on the design that was submitted to DOT and is due to submission to the Public Design Commission shortly. We'll be sure to keep directors updated on that, let you know what the status of the Times Plaza proposal is. We also talked about the Pacific Park Open Space Conservancy. As we know, parcels or portions of the open space around both B14 and B11 are available. On a day like today, I doubt anyone wants to sit outside and enjoy the open space, but hopefully if the groundhog does or doesn't see its shadow, we can have some nicer weather soon and get to enjoy portions of the open space. At the Quality of Life meeting, there was also discussions about the Barclays Center Oculus maintenance and notice of non-ticketed events on the Barclays Center events calendar. Those were just two issues of discussion from members of the community. The Oculus is the entryway for the arena. It's the one with the bright lights and the advertising that goes on. Residents that live in very close proximity to the Oculus had complained about the bright lights operating at very either late into the night or early hours, and that issue has been addressed. It's programmed to be on and off at specific hours, and there's also now a 24-hour number that can be called should there be any issues that arise in the middle of the night. And it's also been decided on by Barclays Center staff that non-ticketed events will be noted on the calendar, even if the details of what the event isn't there will be listed, just so folks in the community can know that there will be activity in close proximity to their homes and to the arena, should there be thousands of people coming into the arena for either not NFL or NBA, NHL rather, or NBA event. At the meeting, we had representation from community organizations, local elected officials, Assemblymember Mosley's office was represented, Borough President Adams' office was represented, as well as Councilmember Cumbo, and I believe we also had representation for about 2 or 3 of the local community boards. So that was good engagement. The next Quality of Life meeting is scheduled for January 23rd, which is next Tuesday. The full schedule of tentative dates for the 2018 calendar has been distributed, but as is the usual practice, we will send out requests for agenda items and notice about the meeting weeks in advance of that date, and then follow up shortly thereafter. So if directors have any questions or concerns about the last Quality of Life meeting, I can address that. If not, I'll turn it back over to you.
Just curious, where are the concerns coming from on the Oculus lighting? Is it from the other side of Flatbush, from residents on that side?
Yeah. So there, it's not. Well, I mean, I assume if one's either bedroom window or sleeping window is in close proximity to it, it can be of direct impact, because on the other side of Atlantic, you have the Atlantic Terminal Mall, the Target, and the Stop and Shop. So there's no residential on that aspect. But on the other side of Flatbush, there are those who can be impacted by it. And also
State, right?
Like there's that after the Pacific Bears community garden. I think there's like a residential building like on that portion of the street that can also be impacted.
So what are the lighting restrictions now? Do they have to turn them down?
It is turned. I think it's programmed to turn off. I can send it. I have it in my notes. I don't remember off the top of my head. I want to say it's programmed to turn off at midnight and come back on at like 10, because in early daylight hours it's not that bright. But I can double check what those hours are. And send it to directors. And there's also, again, a number. Should it start malfunctioning and start like rotating or like being extremely bright, there's a number that residents can call to have the issue immediately addressed.
Was there some other maintenance issue, or was it just lighting?
It was just lighting for the Oculus. The reason why it says maintenance is because when the last incident was brought up, it occurred on I think a Friday night, and the engineer or the arena personnel that would have been responsible for it had to be called and the crew had to be brought in. But now there's access to the security staff that's there 24 hours that can call to make sure it's immediately addressed. There was just a slight lag in response time. And that was why, the issue of maintenance and making sure that it had to be mechanically reset. Whereas previously it's programmed according to the hours. Again, midnight to I believe 10 o'clock, but I can double check that. Any other questions?
All right, thank you, Toby. I don't recall, but I believe the Drew Gabriel, who's our new community liaison, was introduced to the community at the last Quality of Life meeting, but I do not believe he was introduced to you, the directors. So Drew, he was? Again, as I said, I don't recall. Just wanted to make sure. So the purpose of the meeting was to really bring you all together to discuss the new arrangement between Faris City and Greenland. But I wanted you to know that, and this was something that we had discussed with each of you individually over a year ago. And it was something that it was thought of, and we wanted you to be aware of where things were at that time, so that you did not hear anything that leaked out. Obviously, nothing did, and they were able to finalize this arrangement, and we're looking forward to this arrangement leading to them going vertical and completing the project. I think from your perspective, or I guess the state's perspective is the best way to say that, nothing changes related to our general project plan. Nothing changes to any of our agreements, our developers' agreements, or other commitments that were made between us and the developer. mainly the MEC is one of our better documents, design guidelines. None of that changes with this agreement in ownership. Also, we, at the time when they first became a permitted developer, Greenland, in 2014, we signed an estoppel confirming that none of those agreements would change. We are in the process of reviewing a new estoppel that does the exact same thing. It had to be modified because at the time in 2014, when we initially agreed to this document, B2, B3, B4, B12, B14, certain buildings were not completed. Now that those buildings are completed, we needed to update the document, but the core of the document still remains the same, which is the development agreement does not change, the GPP does not change, the MEC does not change, and that's very important to moving this project forward. And also, the agreement in 2014, June 2014, which accelerated the building of the affordable units, that does not change. And so we are looking forward to really a partnership that we know both partners, we've worked with both partners, we're looking forward to them moving forward, and we think it'll be a great relationship. It's worked well the last several years, and we're looking forward to them moving along and moving this project forward. And so I just wanted to make sure all the directors understood where the state stands, which is we're moving the project forward and we're looking forward to getting this done. So Ashley and Scott, if you would present now, and then there'll be a conversation between the directors and the developer so that you all can have your questions answered.
Okay.
Here's both of them, Toby.
Hi, everybody. For those who don't know me, I'm Ashley Cotton with Forest City. This is Scott Solish from Greenland USA. Together we have for a long time, but together today we're representing Greenland Forest City partners. Thanks for all coming together kind of last minute. So as you all know, in 2014, Forest City brought on a partner, a joint venture partner, and a fellow developer to finish out the Pacific Park project that obviously we've been working on for over a decade. And at that point, the relationship was 70-30, except for on Barclays Center and B2, or 461 Dean Street. And since that day, Greenland has been in Metro Tech working side by side as developers. I think there's almost 30 professionals working there on all the amazing results you've seen since then. 550 Vanderbilt, 38 6th Avenue, and 535 Carlton, all being places people call home today. And open space, and obviously continuation of critical infrastructure work for the Long Island Railroad. And so it's, a source of pride that we've done all that remarkable work together after such a long beginning. And I think it says a lot about who Greenland is and about, their tenacity, their skills, and their commitment to project documents. They walked right into everything that had been in place. So today's news, or I guess Monday's news, is similar in that fact and reflects a transition that my company, Forest City, which is a publicly traded REIT, and just as a different being than Greenland today, interest in changing the ownership structure again to what we call 95-5, right? So 5% Forest City and 95% them. And to be specific, that is on all vertical development going forward and platform work and railroad work. It is not on 535 Carlton, 550 Vanderbilt, 38 6th Avenue, and the permanent rail yard, right, which is nearly complete, and therefore you can imagine you keep the structure the same at 70-30. My team, our infrastructure experts, have been working with the railroad for a very long time, so we want to see that work through. It obviously doesn't impact 461 Dean either, because that's 100% owned by my company. It has nothing to do with Greenland. And obviously you all know that Onexum purchased the Barclays Center from us, a year ago or something like that. So to be very specific, the 95-5 structure will relate to 11 buildings to come, and future work after the permanent rail yard is done. So what does that mean? In addition, news this week is that Marianne Gilmartin, the CEO of Forest City in New York, myself, Susie Yu, Jeff Rosen, and Adam Green, sort of the senior team that's been building out the residential buildings, are all leaving Forest City to start a new development company. And obviously this is exciting news for us, but not today's subject. What's relevant to you guys is that we are contracted with Forest City to continue to work on our obligations at that 5% structure or at that 30% structure. So in many ways, your lives don't change. You'll see Scott, you always have. You'll see me, you always have. And besides ownership structure, the public-facing side of it, might not seem that dramatically different. What it does mean, obviously, is that at a 95% owner for future buildings, and I'll turn to Scott to talk about them, obviously they're in a driving seat in many ways, and we're in our 5% seat, I guess. So that's the news. Just made a few notes so I don't make any mistakes. It doesn't change quality life meetings, 2-week look-aheads, CLO existing. It doesn't change project requirements. I guess, that's the biggest headline. Hopefully you got that from news coverage already. Affordable units, the GPP, the environmental monitoring, everything that, the people in this room are experts. And I mean the people around the table and obviously our community stakeholders who are here. And so the things are still in reality. They truly just step into an ownership place. They were already a permitted developer. They are already our partner in every way, building everything you've seen before. And I think that's the update on that piece. We were going to talk then about some project-related things, but I could pause for a minute, make sure I can answer questions on all sorts of news, and then we have more to say. That might make sense, though.
Director?
Ashley, can you just say the buildings again that are excluded? You said permanent rail yard and 3 addresses.
The buildings so 550 Vanderbilt, 38 6th Avenue, and 535 Carlton Avenue. And then, of course, 461 Dean Street was never owned by Greenland anyway. So it's 3 buildings as a joint venture, 4 buildings if you think of Forest City.
And I'm sorry, the 70-30 is 70 Greenland.
Yeah,
30.
always has been. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to touch on the green fence really quickly because I know it's everyone's favorite topic, and then turn over to Scott Solish, who will talk more about maybe the future. Sure. So the green fence today is gone, but there's still a chain link fence in the road, as you guys know who all live around there. And that's because the sidewalk needs significant repairs because of all the weight that was sitting on it. So I talked to somebody that lives next to Jimmy and was like, it's so close, but why did you stop? And it's not stopped. It's just now we're doing, finishing out work on the actual B12 site, but specifically that sidewalk needs to get fixed before you pull a fence back. Otherwise it wouldn't be safe to be walked on. Then obviously the striping of the street and the putting back of the DOT signage for parking, so that we finally get some parking back on Dean Street. So I had always said, maybe we can get this all done by the end of the year, but it really was, it's more than putting stuff back together. Sometimes it's as hard as sort of disrupting it. So unfortunately, it's just not done yet, but hopefully in the next 30 days, we'll go back to parking and walking down the sidewalk, and I know for all of us, it's a huge relief just to see that wall gone. So that's some good news. And then I'll turn it over to Scott.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thanks, Ashley. And just one other thing that Marion and Toby touched on with Times Plaza, I'm proud to say that DOT and Stantec, their designer, brought it to the Public Design Commission today, who gave their unanimous approval for the design. So it's an important step forward, which means that we're now free to work with DOT and Stantec and advance the reconstruction of Times Plaza. I will say the one question they had was a location of a potential concession, and they wanted to make sure it was movable so that it could adapt to the pedestrian flow across the plaza. So DOT took special note of that, but otherwise they gave it a unanimous approval. It's the fastest I've ever gone through a PDC presentation, so very proud of that. So we'll keep you informed as Times Plaza moves ahead. And really just to cherry pick on what Ashley and Marion and Toby said, and thanks everyone. So we're very excited about this. We're really proud of what we in Faris City have done over the last 4+ years, really starting from 2014 when we closed and came in as a 70-30 partnership, the buildings, and as Ashley said, that now we have 3 buildings, not including 461 D, and 4 buildings, more than 750 units of affordable housing, and people living in all three. And so you see people with strollers and dogs and, families of all kinds and kids in the playroom and people using the gyms in the affordable building and the open space open. And so it's really great to kind of look back and see how much we've done. But there's also a tremendous amount of things to come, which we're also very excited about. And we're really excited that this is a 95.5 partnership. It's still Greenland Forest City partners. And we're excited for the future. We also announced that we are going to begin design work on B4, which is the building on the corner of Atlantic and 6th. It's a larger building than the other buildings. We had talked previously about potentially looking at it as an office possibility, which would have required an entitlements process and an EIS, but we're just going to focus on the project as a residential project, meeting the GBP design guidelines as currently contemplated. So we expect that design work will commence shortly. We'll, of course, be coming to the directors with the design presentation, the quality of life, so everyone knows what's going to be built. And we're hopeful that we can break ground and start construction sometime in probably the late second quarter of 2019. And we're going to move ahead with that project. So happy to answer any questions about what we're going to be doing, or Greenland Forest City is 95.5, or anything else that anyone would like to talk about today. Thank you.
Jamie?
Could you just give us an example of sort of what the task within the 95.5 that now Greenland will be taking over that Forest City had done in the past? I mean, I understand that the MEC is the same, I understand that the GPP is the same, and the project's commitments, but can you give us an example of some of the things that may shift?
It's actually not a tremendous amount that will shift, because we've been true co-developers since we've started. So we've had people in our construction teams and our development teams and our finance teams and our legal teams and leasing and marketing. We've really worked hand in hand as partners. Ashley is a much better public speaker than I am, so she graciously has come before you and the Quality of Life meeting and many other public boards and public entities to answer questions and give presentations. But we've worked hand in hand to prepare everything and make sure that we're able to communicate clearly across to whatever the stakeholder is. And so you'll probably be hearing more from me. Our team will have more of a primary role on the vertical development. So Forest City will probably scale back, but I'll let Ashley speak more to that. But Greenland Forest City has been a true partnership. And so we're not going to be adding new responsibilities, other than that we'll have more responsibility within the joint venture for execution.
One thing I forgot to say, I'm sorry, I'm looking down at my notes. We called all the elected officials, and there are very many, not just the ones you represent, but like 2 assembly, 2 congressional, et cetera, about this on Friday to make sure they knew the news was coming. I was remiss in skipping past that. Sorry.
As you answer these questions, can you go give us, I think Jamie's question really is, since Marianne is going to be leaving and the senior management of Forest City is going to be leaving, who's going to be in place making those decisions? I think that's more what you were asking.
But as I said, that team, which I'm one of them, has a contract with Forest City now to continue those roles, right? So if you think of a mix of a meeting on any given topic, there's probably a lawyer from both sides. Scott and Ashley are both there. 2 different people that do finance, construction professionals, et cetera. It's just that, we're a small group that left. It's quite public who we are, right? And none of us are lawyers, right? So it's sort of a combination between the services that, what our skill set is. We're developers, and obviously you guys know what I do as best as I can. And then, someone like a lawyer isn't on our team, but is at Forest City. So it's kind of a mix. It's just every meeting always has both parties in it.
That's how it was with the 70-30, and we'll...
Yeah. I mean, a perfect example is the sales at 550 Vanderbilt, right? Every meeting with Corcoran for a while and Ryan Serhan's team now. I would say there's 2 people who care about marketing and public affairs. There's 2 people that, who are lawyers that can deal with contracts. There's 2 people, we've been really like a mixed medley. They're in one Metro Tech. I don't know if everybody knows that, but they've been in our office building since day one. So we just go back and forth on the elevators and spend a lot of time together.
Yeah.
I guess on that since you, I think you said, Ashley, you guys are maybe stepping sort of back from the 30 down to like a 5% level. What's the plan for Greenland in terms of filling that 25% gap?
There's no gap. We're taking on an additional 25% ownership, and so that's our responsibility. And there's nothing to fill. We're acquiring an additional stake, and then we'll be executing as a 95-5 partnership.
Well, I guess
More
what
the
I'm
financial risk that you're taking on.
you're not taking a step back in terms of. I mean, it sounds like then Ashley's saying their team is not taking a step back in terms of capacity and staffing. You all are taking a step forward in terms of financial and capital.
I guess it doesn't really matter how many people are on it. That seems sort of irrelevant in my mind today, but the skill set, the skills you need to do something like Pacific Park, which includes sales, design, legal, finance, accounting, construction, government affairs, exist across the two companies already, and our 5% interest in it will be fulfilled by the people that I've mentioned already. Right. In working with them. So you can imagine, I think everybody read, we might have a new Dean Street address. You guys see me a lot already. You'll see even more of me probably. You know, I'll be at Metro Tech. I'll be in our Dean Street office. I'll be in our Midtown office. You know, it's just sort of.
Right. And as we've been here for the last 4 years, I mean, our team has grown. And as I've said, that since we've been, and as Ashley said, since we've been co-developing the project already, our team is in place to execute on the remainder of the project.
Yeah, I mean, you guys only see Scott, and you know who Hugang is, but there are name after name after name of people that I work with every day on Greenland's side.
So I guess just I don't know if other folks have a question on this. Do we know what the combo of B4 is still supposed to be? I know now it's residential, but in terms of, I think before it was a condo, rental, affordable, non-affordable blend. Is that still the plan?
We're still working through it, and when we have a final plan, we'll come back and let you know.
And I'll keep going. Then on that, I guess the other question I have is sort of on the plan for, I know that you all are fully obligated to meet the affordable housing timeline. I guess my question is, given that the project is now more delayed than when we first set that timeline, and some of the things on the north side of the project clearly aren't going to come online when we originally first started having these board meetings and conceptualize that, I'm wondering what is the plan to sort of ensure that that all of the affordable housing units meet their guidelines, even though some of the market rate units or the overall project units we know won't come online as quickly as we thought.
I think to Marion's point is and Ashley's point is that there won't be any changes to our requirements, and so we're right now, we've been really focused on working through this transaction to get to this point, and now that we've reached this point of signing and be able to move forward, then we're evaluating each and every site and the schedule. Obviously, we have a commitment on the affordable, and we intend to meet it. It's going to be different than what we announced in 2014, but as the plans come into focus for those sites on the north side, then we'll be able to come back and update you in real time. Today, I don't have news on exactly when other buildings besides B4 are going to go.
So I guess I understand that. I guess maybe this is not maybe just for you, but sort of broadly for us as a board and for ESD. I think that sounds like the plan is one building at a time, which in some ways I understand. That's like how development happens. On the other hand, I am a little bit worried about what that means in terms of concentration of affordable units on one side of the site, and how we could potentially have to fill all of the affordable units on the south side of the site and basically end up with the north side of the site that's predominantly market rate. And I think that that's just a long-term concern and something as a city and as a state we've all been moving away from and not trying to concentrate affordable units sort of in pockets of a broader property. So I think it's problematic if we're only going to do this one building at a time. I actually think that's...
I don't think anyone said one building at a time. I think that he just doesn't have any news besides B4 that's different today than everyone's questions, which are, what about B15? What about B12? You guys have seen designs, you know what I mean?
But I think what we just heard, Ashley, was that as each building comes on, as we get to each building, we will be planning and filling the affordable housing as we can figure it out, which is different than saying...
Yeah, I just don't think that's what he's saying. I think he's saying that they're analyzing 2,250 units of housing across 6,430. And so you design each building separately, but of course they've got to look at it comprehensively. Right. So I think it's just I think you guys are talking past each other. I don't think that's what he's saying.
So I still think that I understand.
It's the right point. I just want to make sure we didn't misinterpret what Scott was trying to say.
I think then, my question then is still where, like, I still have the old original paper because it's color coded and I like it and it's easy for me. And we've got a bunch of buildings on the north side that were supposed to break ground July 2018. Obviously, none of those are happening, right? We're obviously not on track to do that. If we know that that's not the case, if we know that we're going to be heavier on the south side, I am wondering when the conversation as us as a board with you.
What do you?
B4, I think B4 is the only north side one that right now on this list, besides the 2023 guys, would be happening on time.
What do you mean by heavier on the south side? That like B12 and B13 would become 100% affordable to keep? I mean, that's
12 and B14. No, I mean before we had a set of affordable units on the north side, right? B5, B6, B7, B8 had affordable units in them, and we had obviously affordable units in some of the buildings across that are already come online.
And 100% market buildings.
Right, and 100% market. It was a very blended project, right? There were 100% market buildings. There was affordable buildings. We didn't have any pockets. I'm concerned about the idea that, I mean, this is a large residential development, basically a campus. The idea that we could have affordable pockets and non-affordable pockets. And so what's, like, at what point do we start to have that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I think one important thing to note, and we've talked about this before here, and I know Ashley has, is that when 421A changed and it impacted Pacific Park, it essentially did away with the opportunity to do what that map said, because it didn't allow you to build a 100% market building and still qualify under the Pacific Park law. And so the entire law and the way you do, rental buildings or any other kind of buildings in New York City completely changed. So as that law changed, so changed development at the project. So now that we're through this and we're moving on to the next phase, then it's going to be much easier to update the map. Obviously, it's a long-term project. Update the plan and show how each new building fits into the long-term goal, and exactly meet your point of not doing pockets, but actually creating the mixed income community that I think we all strive for.
So then I guess maybe as a solution, can we get an updated one of these?
That's the point. Yeah, he doesn't have it yet.
Yeah.
But
no, I mean, but I'm asking
when he's ready.
It's like him.
when is the time for,
It'll probably be sometime later this year. I don't have a date certain, but hopefully by sometime in this year we'll be able to go through, besides B4 and the buildings that we've talked about, how it plays out across the rest of the sites.
Any other questions from board members?
Do you want to give a project update, Ashley? Was that it?
That was it.
What do you mean? Sorry.
No, I thought you'd mentioned other project updates, but no. Okay.
I'm happy to answer questions about other buildings if you guys have interest, but people are moving in and things are great.
Okay, so it's time to. Now I'd like to thank you. Now I'd like to lead us in the public comments portion of the meeting that I referenced at the beginning of today's meeting. I understand.
Sorry.
No, you wanted.
Yeah, can I chime in? Just one thing, I had a note from last meeting. Did we ever get, I know you guys, ESD was looking into it, to the litigation agreement stuff that came up last meeting, realizing that residents were signing
The NDA.
An NDA outside of what ESD signed?
I believe we did address it. We did speak. I thought we had forwarded some of the information to you all.
Yeah, the response to those concerns were listed in my follow-up to directors. I'm going to sound like I'm talking in code. there were two separate cases that were discussed in my response. One was a condition in which there was conversation about a agreement, some type of legal agreement that was brought forth, and then the other clarified what the concern was with the resident that Director Stein had brought to my attention. So I, for sake of not giving the incorrect information, I can bring the section to the memo that had the response to your attention. I think everyone who I've had the conversation with understands the reason why I'm being selective with my words. I can't disclose a non-disclosure agreement.
We can forward what was sent.
Yeah,
It was never signed.
It was
so
never.
There is no non-disclosure agreement signed between us and a neighbor. So I guess.
But I
that's
just
the
want
bottom
to
line.
emphasize that the point of raising it was that we were unaware that people who were receiving noise and air quality mitigations had to sign.
They
or were
didn't.
even
They
offered
didn't.
They
sign.
It was a
didn't.
one-time thing, and it never happened.
Right, and that was why in my response it outlined the process for requesting the mitigation either for an air conditioner or for a window. There was just a specific, unique situation with that resident.
Where it came up, but it did not happen.
Right, it was not executed. Thank you, Ashley. It made it easier for me
Yeah,
to talk in code.
there's no reason to feel like there's a mystery here. There is no mystery.
No, I just still had it on my outstanding items
of course.
list. And then the other one that I had, sorry, Mara, which I'm going to say I feel comfortable pausing, though I want to have the right to bring it back because it's winter and it's cold and it seems less relevant, is the street signage on public areas, which in this moment in time, like I don't see people sitting outside in a park in 30-degree weather with snow quite as frequently, but I do want to come back to this in terms of these are public areas, they're supposed to be accessible. We want to make them encouraging and inviting, and so coming back and looking at what that signage is and how people know that this is an area.
So you missed the AYCDC
Oh,
director's
sorry.
tour during
Sorry.
the blizzard? The signs
Yes,
were there.
yeah, I missed
You
that.
might
I
have
was
bombed them, but they
home
were there.
in my nice warm toasty. Yeah, but thanks.
It's good. So at this time, we'd like to invite individuals to share their comments. We hope that you can limit them to about 2 minutes. These are not intended to be question and answer session, but it is an opportunity for you to provide your comments. Toby, can you call upon individuals who have signed up to make comments
Yes.
and keep track?
No, unless you want to sit with the residents. All right, the first name that I have on the list is Faris Amin, representing the AR Community Advisory. You can have a seat. You can come up to the microphone. It's easier for you. And I'll let you know once your 2 minutes are up.
4 minutes? 4 minutes after?
Yeah, you are representing an organization, so 4 minutes. Thank you, Steve.
Do I press this button?
Yes.
No.
No, it's on.
You're fine.
Okay. Okay, hi. Hi, everyone. Happy New Year. My name is Faris Amin. I live a half a block away from the arena and a community member with the board and advisor to the Mosque Al Farouk. It's a Muslim community. And just for the project itself, yes, this is a development project that has attracted its wealth to continue to build economic measures, that continue to want and that we continue to want and need opportunities on all avenues of the development course. Project has attracted developers as well as groups that may put our community at risk. At risk, I may speak of last year, 2017, we had a man that visited our place of worship, and he was an unfamiliar face. And that harms our community when we see an unfamiliar face. Weeks later, after that unfamiliar face, we was told that he shot somebody. So that man was walking around our community in the place of worship as well with a deadly weapon. So that is a security measure. So we want to, of course, at Farouk, place of worship, we have been working on improvements to enhance and advance our security and community services. So this is a question to our developers, whomever the majority of stake goes to. Basically, we want to enhance and advance our security measures in the community, in the place of worship, to identify people who are coming in and out. And as the arena brings up, and that being a place of worship, we are welcoming to all. Anybody can come and worship or say they're Muslim when they are not. We want to identify these people. And basically we're trying to advance our security system, and we need the assistance to do so. So whom can assist and support us, and how? Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Steve Etlinger, representing the Barclays Center Impact Zone Alliance. Mr. Etlinger, you have 4 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I have a little statement I wanted to read, but first I'm just curious, to keep it short, I can't poll the directors, I don't think it would be proper, but how many of you have visited the site in the last, say, 2 months? One person. Wow. I would urge you to
Yeah.
two. Okay.
It's not a comment, Steve, please.
I would urge the directors to visit the site as often as possible. Statement on behalf of Bekiza Community Group of local organizations and residents concerned about Pacific Park management and quality of life issues. We meet from time to time. We have an active email list for those of you who don't know us. And we say, this week's news about changes in ownership of Atlantic Yards Pacific Park further heightens pre-existing concerns about the lack of oversight, accountability, and transparency that the AYCDC was created to alleviate. We fear it is likely that transparency and accountability will be further diminished due to the primarily foreign ownership of the developer and the apparent passing of responsibility for day-to-day management to an outside contractor, L&L MAG. We desperately need the governor and our local elected officials to increase oversight of this project, which has already fallen far short of what was promised in 2006. At the time of its approval, Atlantic Yards was sold to the public and to New York State as a Brooklyn-centric project promoted by a Brooklyn-based and Brooklyn-focused developer with an overarching goal of replacing designated blight with a vital multi-use community. The project was to be completed by 2016. We are now in 2018, and less than a third of the project's promised buildings are complete. Even setting aside delay, what has been delivered has often been less than promised. For example, the degrees of affordability for the affordable units are less than promised. The number of jobs created for the community cannot be independently confirmed, and the arena is apparently just barely profitable. Of great consequence to our community, the management of day-to-day operations has largely been coordinated by the for-profit developer. Now, the arena is owned by a Russian billionaire, and the remaining development is 95% controlled by a Chinese company whose stock is not traded on an American stock exchange. To our knowledge, the largest stakeholder in Greenland USA is the government of Shanghai. The company is opaque and has rarely made itself available for substantive questioning from the community, except today. Welcome, Scott. Good job. And or public about this project. The outside hired consultant retained for this management is a privately owned company without the financial stake that the developer had, Forest City. The quarterly reports and conference calls with investors that provided some window into the entire operation will no longer take place. Much more of the project management is out of reach of the public. This is very serious, and we all could end up paying a hefty price if things go wrong. Keep in mind the following. The Shanghai government could have more say about this project than New York's own government. And day-to-day management may now operate even more without expectation of consequences, most especially in the context of negligent ESD management that the AYCDC is supposed to prevent. You must ensure improved oversight, transparency, and accountability to local entities. And further, it's time to update the developer's obligations to match the public's needs now. Thank you for considering these important issues.
Thank you, Mr. Etlinger. The next speaker signed up to speak is Peter Crashes, representing the Dean Street Block Association and also Bekiza. Mr. Crashes, you have 4 minutes to speak.
Hi, thanks very much. I'm going to keep this brief. I'm here. I just want to concur with Steve. There's real concern about there is a change in the sense of control that the community has. And I think, I was speaking to Faris earlier, and he said, it seems like, if you have a company that's not nearby making decisions, then the quality of what's being delivered is not as sensitive to what the community needs as when a company that has a stake and is in the immediate area. And I think that's been always the dynamic here, and we've often heard these kind of appeals to personal stake rather than business stake. And it's the most effective outcome is when the New York State government, New York City government, and the owners all have a stake in delivering a very successful neighborhood or piece of a neighborhood to the public. And that's what we want to see. That's what we've been trying to work to see forever. So I'm actually here for two reasons. One, I want to speak in behalf of Jamie Stein's appeal to add another layer to the SEIS process. And I think maybe I can try to use some of the discussion here today to show the importance of that. So, at the beginning of the meeting, we heard that the construction fence on Dean Street had been moved and the traffic had been restored, and then actually it was Ashley who clarified that, in fact, there hasn't been a change to the traffic patterns yet. Another example is the discussion about the non-disclosure agreement, which is actually, I think, a serious issue. What happened was the developer, who was required to give a noise mitigation that for families who have a noise impact from construction or a project operation, a family requested properly for noise mitigation in 2010. I think we finally received the mitigation in 2015 or 16. The Ashley and Scott were in the loop on the non-disclosure agreement being given to the property owners before they were given the noise mitigation in 2015 or 16. So, and this is a family with young kids, very close to the arena, and construction that wasn't contemplated as occurring in the second phase of the project or overlapping with the construction, the second phase of the project. This is the problem, is that we have this dislocation between the commitments that are required in the SEIS, which are set basically in 2006, and we have a project which is ongoing over the course of probably 30 years. You need to update those commitments. You need to have flexibility, and the government needs to have the ability to modify its behavior and structure in order to avoid being negligent. So, we have, through these SEIS processes, we've had each environmental review has been a failure so far. In 2006, we've recently, Daniel Doctoroff, who was the deputy mayor at the time, written an autobiography and says that he thought the project was a crazy risk, and that that it was a complex project, and he wasn't sure it could be built, and yet the project environmental review assumed a 10-year construction timeline, and environmental reviews aren't meant to be are not really meant to be applied in the way they are if there's more than a 10-year timeline. In 2009, the state and the developer updated their environmental review by assuming that there was a 3-year delay.
4 minutes.
Okay, so the 2014, the outcome in the creation of this board was due to the threat of litigation, politically charged litigation. What we need to see is a process in which the political community, the political interest and the community interest, the focus of this board are all brought together in one thread.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Crash.
So that the outcome is for the public's interest and not for the political interest.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There are no other speakers signed up to speak.
Thank you. There being no further comments, I want to thank the directors and everyone attending for your... Sure.
Go ahead. So I just, I want to make 2 points. One is thank you, Marion, for mentioning the white paper that I put together. Thank you, Toby, for agreeing to distribute it to the board. I just want to be clear that it's some ideas that I promised to put together. Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you want this?
Oh, thanks. I figured if I looked at you, you would understand me better. But anyways, so I just want to, thank Marion and thank Toby for entertaining this white paper. Just to be clear with the other board members, it's a set of ideas through observations that I've had over my 3 years on the board and in working with many community groups and in discussion with them. And so I hope that you'll take it and use it as you see fit. And I'm sure it will be altered heavily before it actually gets implemented. But that was my effort to put some thoughts and ideas out there. Secondly, I also want to thank Toby for getting us the mitigation matrix that comes with HDR's quarterly report. It's a pretty extensive, double-sided, 37-page document that goes through each of the mitigations that are within the Memorandum of Environmental Commitments. And it gives, a description of that mitigation, the means and methods, and then there's notes, which it's the first one I've looked at, but I'm assuming that it's sort of done on a quarterly basis. I really strongly encourage the directors to have a look at this. I hope, Toby, that you will provide it with each quarterly meeting. I think it's, from experience, it's a little hard to get it in the attachments in that CD-ROM, and this was much easier. I also want to commend HDR, frankly, and the state and the developer for such a comprehensive document. I think there's some really good stuff in here. And it helps me really understand that, there are daily monitoring activities happening by folks. And I think without this document being publicly available, we're actually doing ourselves a disservice to help folks understand how much activity is going on. And I think so, the ability to, I think I've requested in the past to get this on the ESD website in some form or way. If we can make this a public document, I think that would be very helpful. And lastly, some of the things that I've gone through and I've looked at, especially things like queuing of trucks where they're not supposed to be queuing and violations that have been cited. And, just sort of disclosing that, I think, would really bring a lot of ease. Folks that I've talked to within the community have some real concern about trucks being where they're not supposed to be, about queuing where they're not supposed to be. So again, a full public disclosure of this document would be great. But there are some spots that I think could really benefit from some community input. For example, there's a section about rodent control. It's, if you want to know, mitigation item number 144. And this is rodent control. And so in the means and methods, we learned that, ESD and HDR will work, with all the contractors to make sure that each site has a plan for rodent control. And I know that last meeting, I think we brought this up, and it's something that the Brooklyn Borough President has brought up to me, that rodent control was an issue. So I think, there's a real opportunity here for the community to learn from the extensive monitoring that is going on, and also for the community to be able to input what they're seeing on a daily basis into this document. So thank you. I enjoyed my service and time on the board. It was a pleasure working with all of you. Thanks.
Before you speak, Barika, I do want to thank you, Jamie, for all of your help and your words. I think I can speak on behalf of Toby and say that we really do appreciate the time you put in and all the effort that you gave talking to us, giving us input. And I do want to say that a lot of mitigation metrics that you went through, along with HDR, Greg Lynch, who's on the ground on a day-to-day basis, walking the site twice a day. He allows us the ability to see things happening before the community get to the community. And I think a lot of the reasons complaints have gone down, the reason HDR can work so well together is the fact Greg can see these items, identify the items, reach out to HDR, reach out to our other consultants and the developer directly, and through Toby, to the point where on a day-to-day basis, things can be addressed so quickly. So I think what you're really reviewing is the effort of a number of people who are really working hard to make a very large 22-acre site, a major construction site with multiple buildings going on at one time, while we have one of the most active, venues in the country, doing concerts, doing activities, and trying to make this as best we can work with the community. So we do thank you for always giving us the input, and we thank everyone who's worked hard to put this together. think that was for you, Jamie.
Well, you too.
Does that work? So sorry, folks, because I missed the beginning. I always have a meeting that butts right up against the 3 o'clock start. So I just wanted to add this one. So I'm the council representative. I know that Toby and both the development team do an enormous amount of work of coordinating and outreaching to elected officials. I think one of the things that I've been hearing, not only from some of their, right, they have new staff, there's new elected, broader representation in the Brooklyn area, but also new residents. There's a lot of mobility. There's a lot of folks who come in. I think there's huge applause to folks who have been a part of this for well over a decade now, but there's also folks who are coming in brand new to this conversation and trying to understand what's going on, what's happening, what is the project, what is the site. So I think as a recommendation, I think it would be good if we as a board and ESD could do a here's where we are, right? Here's where we are on all of the different facets of the project. This is where the school is. This is where we are with the rail yard. We don't really have a way to say you can understand where the project is as of, March 2018 if you don't have sort of the full history and go through board meetings and minutes that are on the website. And I think it's a good moment with both the ownership transition and sort of a good time in the project to pull together a lot of that information in one place where people could easily go and navigate it and say, I don't have the work life or a job or the opportunity or necessarily the desire to be engaged at the level that maybe everybody who tends to attend these meetings or quality life meetings do and can, but I still would like to know sort of where the project is now, which is also, I think, tied to why I was pushing for an update to this sheet. And I'm glad that it's something that the developer's thinking of. I just think we, as this table and also the community more broadly, sort of need an understanding of, we know things are different than when we first started and when this board was first conceived. Where is all of that, and then what's the plan for sort of going forward? Because it's not the same as what it was. So I think that's something that I'd like to see if I could get ESD to do, and I'm happy to work on it as well.
So why don't we do this? I think it's a good idea. It's always a good idea to be able to consolidate and summarize things, especially in a project that over the last 2 years, we've seen 4 buildings come live. So that's a good idea. Why don't we try to do, if you could give us just an idea or sense of what you're thinking, if you could send that to Toby and we can work from there, opposed to us kind of think for you. If you could think for yourself and share it with us, and then Toby can try to put together what your thoughts are. And if there are other directors who are interested in being a part of that development, be more than happy to work with whomever wants to work with this and try to put some type of summary together.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from directors? Hearing none, I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Oh,
So moved, sorry.
Second. Second? Did I get a second? Second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you.